السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. الآن عندنا الدرس السابع والعشرون. So we're now on lesson 27. So again, as normal, I'll read through this and then go through each exercise and explain the rules within this lesson, inshallah. So from here, المدرس: متى جئت من جدة يا خالد؟ جئت أمس. أجاء إبراهيم معك؟ لا، لم يجيء بعد. سيجيء اليوم أو غدا إن شاء الله. سيجيء اليوم أو غدا إن شاء الله. Just pay attention between the difference between saying اليوم and اليوم. If you say اليوم, that means the day. But if you say اليوم, that means today. المدرس: أرزلت السفيرة؟ ذهبت إلى مكتبه ولم أجده. سمعت أنه لم يكن في جدة ذاك اليوم. يا عدنان، إنك غبت أسبوعين، فأين كنت؟ كنت في المستشفى، كنت مريضا جدا، والله لقد كدت أموت. والله ما عرفت ذلك، ولم يقل لي أحد إنك مريض وإنك في المستشفى. كيف حالك الآن؟ لعلك الآن أحسن. الحمد لله، أنا الآن أحسن، ولكنني لا أزال ضعيفا. شفاك الله شفاء كاملا. يا عثمان، إنك تغيب كثيرا. غبت يومين في هذا الأسبوع وثلاثة أيام في الأسبوع الماضي. لا ينبغي لطالب أن يغيب كثيرا. لم أغب 3 أيام في الأسبوع الماضي كما قلت، إنما غبت يوما واحدا فقط. لا تكذب يا أخي، إنك غبت يوم السبت ويوم الثلاثاء ويوم الأربعاء. أنا آسف يا أستاذ، لن أغيب في المستقبل إن شاء الله. قم يا آدم، أتنام في الفصل؟ أنا آسف يا أستاذ، غلبني النوم لأنني ما نمت البارحة. لما لم تنم؟ كان بي صداع شديد فلم أنم بسببه. يرن الجرس فيقوم المدرس. يا أستاذ، أنا أريد أن أزورك اليوم بعد صلاة العصر. زرني غدا فإني مشغول اليوم. So inshallah ta'ala, as we go through the exercises, we will come to benefit with what we learn in this lesson. And as we learned in last lesson, those verbs that are initial weak verbs, now we're going to start studying what is called al-fi'l al-ajwaf, the hollow verbs, i.e. the middle letter of the verb is the weak letter. That is what we will start to study bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So in continuing this lesson, we have on here just an introduction to the hollow verbs. So these are weak verbs, but the middle letter is weak. So as you can see here, in the last lesson we learned the verb that the first letter is weak. Now the middle letter is weak, and it's called al-mu'talul ayn, i.e. the ayn of the fa'ala form. The ayn, the letter that coincides with ayn, is weak. So and there's 3 types of weak verbs. As you can see here, we have alif in qala yaqulu, kana yakunu, and the rest of them. So these are all of those verbs that become waw and dhamma in the middle. Then you have ba, yani ja'a yaji'u, ba'a yabi'u, those that become kasra. And jim, nama yanamu, khafa yakhafu, all of those that become alif and fatha. So the first one that we're going to focus on now is alif. So it says here, ta'ammal ma yali, ponder over that which follows. Hamidun qala, at-tullabu qalu, Amina qalat, at-talibatu qulna, anta qulta, antum qultum, anti qulti, antunna qultunna, ana qultu, nahnu qulna. So just to make this a bit clearer for us, as you can see, we had the verb qala. Okay, qala, he said. It becomes yaqulu. It becomes dhamma in the present tense. He's saying. We also have qala yaqilu. But this is for vocab I'm showing you. That's why it's important to know the difference. Qala yaqilu. This means to take a nap, qaylula. But the one that is of our concern right now is qala yaqulu. Qala yaqulu. But the main thing to pay attention to is what happens in the present tense. So when it's ana, for myself, I said, it becomes ana qultu. Originally, it's this. But this letter is naturally a sukun. Qultu. So we get rid of this. That's why we have qultu. Okay? So whenever you place the sukun on the last letter of the verb, which is the lam, before adding the pronoun of who does it, we have to delete the weak letter. We have to delete the weak letter. Okay? So anytime we place sukun. So as you can see in examples where it hasn't been deleted, qalu, qala, qalat, that's because there's no sukun on the last letter of the verb. As for the other conjugations that we have for the different pronouns, we have put sukun on the last letter of the verb. Hence why we delete the weak letter. So that's what happens. So you basically memorize this, the pattern, and you apply it to all of these verbs. Kana, yakunu, kuntu. It apply to all of them. Zara, yazuru, zurtu. The same application will apply to all weak verbs on this pattern, the ones that become waw in the middle. Then we have أسند قام وزار وكان إلى الضمائر كما في تمرين السابق. So they want you to do the conjugation like this, like exercise number 3, to قام وزار and كان. So the same thing you have to do with those 3 verbs. Okay, then اقرأ ما يلي, read the following. Again, you're going to see examples of the verbs from the pattern alif at the moment in usage in these examples. Okay, so again, read over the examples, make sure you know all the vocab, and if you don't, learn the words and also try and translate it into English or your language wherever you're studying from. This will be beneficial to you بإذن الله تعالى. Also we have تأمل ما يلي. Now in the present tense, حامل يقول, الطلاب يقولون. So pay attention to the conjugation of the present tense. So we have حامد يقول, الطلاب يقولون, آمنة تقول, الطالبات يقولن. So here again, because we have to put a sukun on the last letter of the verb, we delete the extra letter, the waw, the weak letter. We delete it. يقولن and not يقولن. No. Okay. So that is also to be noticed when we're conjugating the verb in the present tense form. And we'll continue to see the examples on the next coming pages, inshallah. So as you can see, أنتِ تقولين, أنتن تقولن, أنا أقول, نحن نقول. So أنتن and hunna, as you can see, the weak letter is deleted because the sukun is added at the end of the verb before we add the noon of plural women. So again, after you identify, pay attention to the changes that occur to the verb for the different pronouns for the middle week, then they want you to do the same thing for these 2 verbs, yaqumu and yatufu. Again, they're on the same pattern. It becomes waw and dhamma in the middle, as a middle hollow weak verb. So again, the same conjugation we have done to yaqulu, they want you to do the same thing for yaqumu and yatufu. Okay, then you have iqra ma yali. Again, examples, but in the present tense now. Examples in the present tense. Now, regarding, we're learning a new type of rule, a new type of verb. However, we've learned rules pertaining to the verb before these lessons, where we spoke about what makes the verb take fatha, what makes the verb take sukun. So now it says yaqulu, lam yaqul, yani lam yaqul. Because of lam, the lam, remember, is a jazim al-fi'l al-mudari'. It makes the fi'l al-mudari' majzoom. I take sukun or its equivalent, I deleting the noon and the likes. So in this example, yaqulu, lam yaqul, lam yaqul. Because now, the waw, it takes sukun by nature. But because of lam, the end of the verb has to take sukun. So lam yaqul, we get rid of that weak letter again. La yaltaqi sakinani. Because in Arabic, we're not allowed to have 2 sukuns in a row. We're not allowed to have 2 sukuns in a row. So when we add lam, we delete the weak letter after putting sukun on the last letter of the verb. So for example, it says أدخل لام على الأفعال الآتية وضبطها بالشكل. Enter lam on the following verbs and make them clear with the tashkil, the vowel sounds. So yakunu is going to be lam yakun. So I'll do the first one for you. First one be lam. After I add lam, it becomes lam yakun. We get rid of the weak letter, the waw. Lam yakun. That's what happens for ka yakunu, kana yakunu. then you apply the same thing to the rest of these verbs here. Then it says answer أجب عن الأسئلة الآتية بالنفي مستعمل لم. Answer the following questions with negation using lam. So if you're asked in the present tense or the past tense, sorry, then you need to change the answer to the present tense with lam. Yani the correct form of the verb when using lam. So أزرت المدير يا علي. You said you say لا لم أزره. I'll do the first one for you, just so you can see how this is done. Okay, so it says أزرت المدير يا علي. You say لا first, لا, then lam. Okay, lam azur, because it's not azur no more, not azuru, it's azur because of lam. Lam azur hu al mudir. Yani, so that's how we will answer these questions, following the same kind of pattern. You are to complete the rest of the questions bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, saying that, from here we go to the fi'l al-amr, the command verb. تقول قل قل. So here, I don't add the alif in the command verb before it, because when I get rid of, if I do the deduction, I have تقول, okay? تقول. Now, to derive the command verb form, what do? 1, we put sukoon on the last letter. 2, we delete the present tense letter. Now we're left with قول. Okay, so this is the wow. By default, it takes sukoon, isn't it? As I mentioned to you. So now, how many sukoons we have in a row here? We have 2. So that means I must delete the weak letter. So wow gets deleted also. That means I'm left with قل. Okay, I look at it now. Can I pronounce it? Yes, because I'm not starting sukoon, so I don't need to add the hamza before it, like uktub and idhab. This is not the case. I just say qul, because I don't need to add anything to it, because it starts with a vowel sound. Once I've removed the present tense letter, added sukoon to the last letter of the verb, then I have to delete the weak letter as mentioned. So that's deriving the command verb. This process, this formula can apply to all of them. Delete the present tense letter and put sukoon on the end of the verb, and you will have the form of the command verb, inshallah ta'ala. So, using that formula, you need to make the command verb for all of these verbs here. Tasumu, taqumu, takunu, they're all on the same pattern of qala yaqulu, inshallah. And you'll see, and these are for you to practice. Take the rule I showed you, practice it. You must do the exercises. This is the only way you can drill it in as much as possible. And if you get stuck and anything you don't understand, then just contact me and I will aid you in understanding, inshallah ta'ala. So here you have plenty of examples using the command verb from this form that you can practice with and translate, inshallah ta'ala. And also just to see and memorize how do we use the command verb from the weak middle letters verbs. So the verbs that have weak letters in the middle, like qala, zara, sum, sama, yani sum, qul, zur, like this. So here for the first one, for example, says zurni ghadan ya mahmud. Zurni, yani from the command from zara yazuru, zur, yani zurni, visit me. Ud ba'da sa'atin, yani aada ya'udu, ud means to return. Okay, so those are examples of the command verb, inshallah ta'ala, from the hollow verbs that become wow in the middle. Here it says ta'ammal ma yali, ponder what follows. La taqul. So remember, the prohibition again is like the command verb, but the prohibition, like don't do something, it becomes la taqul. Again, the same process of lam with the verb, the same process. So you apply this to la and nahiya, the rest of these verbs, making it the prohibition. Is اقرأ ما يلي لا تقل هكذا لا تزرني في المساء. So again, these are sentences illustrating this rule that we learned of the la and nahiya, the prohibition with la, and how it makes the verb majzoom. I take sukoon. These are examples illustrating that. Then now we go to the second part of the second type of the hollow verb, and that's where it says يعني حامد باع الرجال باعوا. So this is the hollow verb that becomes ya and kasra. باع يبيع. So here, just as قال يقول becomes قلت, باع يبيع becomes بعت, بعتي, بعت. Okay, so again, if we look at this verb carefully, we have باع becomes يبيع, يبيع. Okay, so in the past tense, when I'm conjugating it, I bear this sound in mind, and it becomes بعت, for example, بعت, or بعت or بعتي. Okay, depending on who you're speaking to. Okay, so that's the usage of this verb now. The hollow verb that becomes ya in the middle. Ba'a yabi'u being from them. So this is examples of how it conjugates for you to read, and then also you apply to all verbs that are on the same pattern that become ya in the middle. So it says أسند جاء وسار إلى الضمائر كما في التمرين السابق. So again, you're going to do the same thing, this conjugation of the verbs for ja'a and sara. Okay, because ja'a yaji'u, sara yasiru. So you're going to do the same thing. Yani ja'a, ja'u, ja'at, jitna, jitta, jittum, jitti, jittunna, jittu, jitna. I done the first one for you. Okay, so now you're going to do the same thing for Sarah. Then اقرأ ما يلي, examples of these kind of verbs in sentences. Inshallah, and then we go to the present tense, just like as we did with the first type of hollow verb. Okay, so that's going to be the plan. This lesson again is just to emphasize and understand the usage of hollow verbs. What is a hollow verb? It's the verb that the middle letter of the verb is a weak one. What are your weak letters? Alif, waw, and ya. So as you can see here, completing the chart of the present tense form of this verb. Ana abi'u, for example, you can see the changes that occur. So read through that again, ponder over those changes that occur for this type of hollow verb. Then here it says asnad yasiru wa ya'ishu. So again, the same the pronouns you use to conjugate the following this verb. You are to conjugate yasiru and ya'ishu using the same pronouns as it's from the same pattern or category of hollow verbs. Then اقرأ ما يلي, again, you have now a number of sentences that are illustrating this rule. يبيع البقال السكر, for example, يبيع, he sells, البقال, the grocer, sells السكر, sugar, والملح, salt, والزيت, oil, والبيض, eggs, والزبد, and butter, والجبن, cheese, والدقيق, flour, والعدس, lentils, وما إلى ذلك, and other than that. So again, these are sentences to illustrate the usage of the hollow verb that becomes ya in the middle. It says تأمل ما يلي, again, when it comes to using lam, same rule applies. Lam yabi', you delete the hollow letter after placing sukun on the last letter of the verb. Why? 2 sukuns in a row is not allowed in the Arabic language. So lam yabi'. This is اقرأ ما يلي, again, sentences illustrating this usage. Because lamma yaji' is the same rule as lam, and the same effect on the verb. It says تأمل ما يلي, now ponder of what follows. Hamidun nama. So again, this is now the verb that becomes alif. The verb that becomes alif in the present tense. So nama yanamu. So it doesn't become yanimu or yanumu. Nama yanamu. However, it's nimtu. Okay, so the same one that becomes alif, when you conjugate it in the past tense, it takes kasra. Okay, just like bi'tu. Okay, so nama, nimtu ana, nimna, nimti, nimta, like this. And again, for the same thing, khafa and kada, you conjugate them the same way as they have done with nama. Then ikra ma yali, you have sentences to illustrate this usage and this type of verb within sentences, inshallah. So as I mentioned before, and I'll always emphasize this, make sure you understand these words, translate them, find out the meanings of words you don't know within these sentences, and make sure you understand it while you're reading it, inshallah. That's the only way you can benefit truly, if you make sure your vocab is being maintained. So after the sentences that illustrate this usage of this type of verb, you have again the present tense of this form of the verb, and that's the one that becomes alif. Nama yanamu, as we can see. Tanamina, yani tanamuna, yanamuna. The alif is maintained in the present tense also. And you're going to do the same thing for yakhafu and yasha'u, again from the same category of verbs. So it will be the same in terms of conjugation. The same additions you add to all the other types of verbs, you will also apply the same for these two verbs, yakhafu and yasha'u. Then again, you have sentences to illustrate this usage in the present tense. Then ta'amul mayali, ponder what follows. Again, the usage of lam, yani yanamu, lam yanam. Okay, yani al-amr, nama, tanamu, nam. La tanam, again, just using the la of prohibition and the command verb, and when it takes sukun, the same thing happens, that weak letter is deleted. Okay, then here some sentences to illustrate this usage. اقرأ ما يلي, read what follows. اقرأ الكلمات الآتية واكتبها مع ضبط الحرف الأول. So again, read the following words whilst putting the correct vowel sounds on the first letter. Okay, then here you have a summary. قال يقول ألف واو, باء يبيع ألف يا, نام ينام ألف ألف. This is the 3 types of weak verbs. Then أنت قلت, أنت بعت, أنت نمت. أنا قلت, أنا بعت, أنا نمت. الأمر, the command, قل بع نام, قل بع نام. Okay, so that's just the 3 categories of the hollow verb summarized there for you. The main thing to pay attention is to these sections where they're showing the conjugation of all the verbs. That is to be learnt and observed for you to practice and apply whenever you're using these verbs and seeing them in usage when you're reading your literature and even the Quran and throughout the ahadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as always, you end your lesson with al-kalimat al-jadida, your new words. But this is a quick summary again. What do you learn in this lesson? The 3 categories of the hollow verb. And that's 1, qala yaqulu, the ones that take waw in the middle. 2, ba'a yabi'u, those that take ya in the middle. Okay, then we have 3, nama yanamu. Okay, those that take alif within the middle. Then the thing to also pay attention to is, for example, lam yaqul, lam yaqul, lam yabi', lam yanam. Okay, qul being the command, bi' the command. This is a summary quickly. Nam, the command. So this is kind of jog your memory of what we've studied so far within this lesson, the types of verbs and how they look when they change. These being the hollow verbs. Fi'l al-ajwaf. It's called fi'l al-ajwaf, the hollow verb. That means it has either alif, waw, or ya in the middle. Those are your 3 weak letters. So that is the end of lesson 27, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.